In 1973, abortion was legalized. Millions of lives have been touched in one way or another because of this. The church, for the most part, has been preaching and standing against it without seemingly providing an answer. Erin Elliott found herself faced with a decision on what to do with her child 6 years after abortion was legalized.
I am that child. My name is David Herford. My mother, Erin Elliott, conceived me in high school out of wedlock. She was white and my father was black, and they weren't really good for each other. And even though abortion at the time would have seemed like the easiest option, for her in her heart, abortion was murder. So instead she chose to give me up for adoption. Shortly after I was born, I was adopted by the Herford family. They were a Christian family, very loving. I had a father, a mother, and 3 sisters. Right off the bat, I was included into their family. We went to church. I went to a Christian school from kindergarten on. We did stuff as a family. We went camping, normal things like that. And right from the start, they made it clear to me that I was adopted, but I never felt like I wasn't a part of the family. I was, and still am, David Herford. The major challenge for me growing up adopted was my identity. I didn't have a blood history to look back on and say this is where I came from, so this is who I am. That, plus the unique dynamic of being a mixed child raised in an all-white family, left me confused and feeling out of place. My parents divorced when I was 9, and after that I didn't have a relationship with my dad. This only made my identity issues worse. However, as I got older, I realized that all of my identity issues could only be resolved in my relationship with Jesus Christ. A few years ago, my mother's health started to decline. One day, I got an unexpected phone call that she had been moved to a hospice house. Over the next few days, my sister and I watched my mother slip away. As we were watching my mom pass away, Amazing Grace was playing in the background, and the Spirit of God hovered in the room. I can't explain to you what it was like to watch the woman who prayed for me constantly pass away. My mother's death was really hard on me, and I can remember driving around for hours in a blind rage at God. Several months ago, I felt the Lord leading me to look for my biological family. My friend and I started looking online with the little information that I had. I found a lady that matched the criteria, and I decided to send her a letter. A few days later, I got a phone call, and to my surprise, I heard this. "Hello, my name is Erin Elliott, and I am your mother." I was speechless. She invited me to come out and visit her in Michigan, and less than a week later, I was pulling into her driveway. I spent a few days with her and got to meet my 2 sisters, Elise and Ebony, and my niece Elora. For the first time in my life, I had a family that looked like me. I had a feeling of completeness and joy.
Randy Bolander, the founder of Hannah's Dream, has been working in the adoption movement for over a decade. We had the opportunity to sit down with Randy and hear his thoughts on adoption.
I think if you're really going to be compassionate and really going to be pro-life, then you've got to step into the next step, which is the children that are born and how do we care for them? How do we support mothers who have them? And how do we support the children? And abortion has to be answered with the cry of adoption. Right now, those that are scooping up the children are preparing to influence decades and even centuries of U.S. and world history. The church has got to have influence there. So adoption, it's for the children, but it's also for the future of the Christian movement. Romans talks about us coming to the Lord as adopted children. We received a spirit of adoption. That's why we're at the table. When he spreads the banquet and we're sitting there, it's because we're his adopted child. We're fully his child, but we were adopted. I would challenge couples who wonder if this is for them or if this is worth it. There are some objections that people have to adoption about fear. How is the child going to turn out? Nobody who has a biological child has an answer to that question. People have biological children all the time that look different, act different, get along, don't get along. Everyone who has a child has that same issue. Oftentimes, what it really comes down to is priority, and people saying, that sounds really hard. People do hard things every day. They wake up in the morning and they do hard things. They go to work, they go to school, they live in places of the world that is hard to live in. We do the things that we want to do and that we believe the Lord has called us to do. Was it hard to adopt 3? It wasn't easy. Was it worth it? I can't even have that discussion.
I am strong for adoption. My life would have been totally different if my mother had chosen to abort me, if adoption hadn't been one of the options she could have chosen. I know that God's heart is to set the lonely in families. There are millions of kids right now that need families and that need to be able to discover what it is to be loved. So I just greatly encourage you to really search your heart to see if God is placing in your heart to say, hey, will you be a home to someone? Will you be a family to someone? Will you be somebody that shows a child that God is a father and that God has love in his heart for them?